This is the Well Within podcast for women who are tired of managing, striving and second-guessing and are ready to reclaim their power. I'm Jackie.
And I'm Ellie. We're a mother-daughter helping women reconnect to their innate power, even when life is chaotic, challenging and uncertain.
This isn't another self-improvement podcast. It requires readiness and willingness to go to the edge of something different and new, and to notice what's hiding in plain sight.
This space invites you to return to who you were before the world taught you who to be.
And reconnect to your well within.
Because when women reclaim their power, anything becomes possible.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Well Within podcast. Today we are reflecting back on the conversation we had with the lovely Lindsey Elliott last week. What a lovely conversation that was. It was nice to catch up with her again. I kind of loved the whole conversation, the way she articulated beautifully the work that she does with predominantly women, helping them, her way of helping them reclaim their power, which I think, we definitely resonate with how she goes about that. That's it's beautiful. So I think there were lots of things to take away from that. What would you say was the main thing for you?
Yeah, I think it was, like you say, the way she articulated things, and she was so genuine and practical in the way she spoke about things and the way she approaches things. And I think, I'm sure that her clients get so much from, the way she can, and the examples that she shared and the way she talks about things in quite like a simple way. It's quite accessible and really easy to digest and understand because, it is quite simple, like we said on the podcast with Lindsey and the conversation we had. But it's oftentimes we do try to and want to try and overcomplicate things. But I just liked how simple and straightforward the way she spoke about things. I really liked how we obviously talked a lot about the fact that you're not broken, you don't need fixing, and we're not able to control our thoughts and our thinking. I think also really like the metaphor that she used about the water. Trying to control our thinking is like trying to be able to hold water in your hands, and it's just impossible. I think it's such a simple thing. And we were speaking about this earlier around if we can learn to not believe our thinking, then gosh, anything would be possible, really, wouldn't it? But I think a lot of us live our life so limited by this narrative and these stories. And I think obviously what we spoke about with Lindsey is that the more the story loops and the more then evidence is given back to the system that the story or whatever protective story or whatever is going on, then it's almost like becomes compounded and it gets layered and layered, and then you start to believe it. Why wouldn't you? Because if it is this constant narrative and this constant thinking going on, and you don't really know the mechanics and where, what the human mind and what it actually does and what it's actually capable of and where your experience of life really comes from, it is really difficult to be able to decipher, right, well, is this true or is this not true? Because if you repeat something 100 times, you're going to probably start believing it.
Yeah. And just listening to you say that, then I think it is that the power behind thought. It is just, it is so, so, so powerful. But we've probably said before, we use it kind of against us rather than for us. And when we can stand the nature, of thought, that it isn't we can't feel it, we can't touch it. It is a sort of stream of energy and that comes through us, and we
it's constantly
create,
changing.
constantly changing. And I love that Lindsay talked about that quite a lot. And like you said, this water, because something is constantly changing, and we're constantly trying to hold on to it or pin it down or manage it or reframe it or grip hold of something, it is absolutely impossible. Often we refer to, it's like trying to hold a cloud in place or move a cloud so it doesn't rain, or it's that impossible. But the power of thought that can be used to create, and the creative power in it is phenomenal, and it's obviously available to us all. But until we kind of start to see it for what it is, and allowing every thought and feeling to not define us or believe that it is personal. We talked about, this personal thinking and this sort of the impersonal thinking. So the personal thinking, when we take everything and we believe everything to be true about about us, that's when we get kind of tripped up, and it's, as you say, we start to believe it. It starts to become obvious out there in the world that, yes, of course, my thinking, I'm going to believe my thinking. I'm seeing it there. I mean, it's obvious, but we obviously are perceiving beings, and we're creating our own thinking. And whatever thoughts are going on, whatever we're believing in that moment to be true and personal, that is what we're going to have reflected back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I love the examples that she used of the clients, a couple of the clients that have come to her, especially the lady with obviously very anxious thinking around going into the shops, and, thinking she was going to be sick. I mean, as she was telling us, gosh, it must be so a grip I could feel when she was talking about her, just to avoid, you must avoid so much life.
To have such an impact on everything, wouldn't it? 'Cause it's everything's getting moved around this main chess piece, isn't it, almost?
Yeah. I mean, maybe there were certain shops or certain areas that she felt less of the grip, so that her life had to be managed. Sounds like it had to be managed about going to those shops. She couldn't go to those, so she could only experience that. And the energy and the exhaustion to manage that thinking that's going on, that, and the beliefs that feel so compelling. And that's the thing. And we're not saying that, oh, it's just your thinking. It can easily just waff it away. It's not. It feels really real, because, I mean, this has probably been going on for so long, in this lady's life, that, and brought her wonderfully to Lindsay and to Lindsay's work, to have a different conversation that is not about trying to manage the thinking or trying to reframe or think about it in a different way, or tools and techniques that will help her sort of distract her as she goes into the shops. It wasn't, it's like, you can handle anything, including, being sick in a shop. We're not going to die. But I'm sure for her at that time, it felt like the embarrassment, the shame, that was all compounding into the future of, well, what if this happens and I won't be okay. And yeah. And it feels so real.
Yeah, exactly. And I love what Lindsay said around that. And I think this is kind of the big difference between what we're talking about and the way we, Lindsay and ourselves, coach from, and from this space, from this understanding, is in comparison to, well, most other things. It's that understanding of actually how the mind really works, and where our experience of life is coming from. And Lindsay said that in understanding that, that is what an understanding of what was happening, for her in her mind then led to the freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because there isn't any freedom with just moving chess pieces around a board and hoping that I'll be okay, I'll be okay. Because then you've got, oh, well, I hope I'll be okay when I go into this shop. Then you've got a
Mm,
whole new kind of loads of thinking on the thinking going on.
yeah,
It's about not being kind of afraid, controlled, just to see the thoughts for what they are. Absolutely just thoughts running through. Yes, they might feel this way, but we don't have to kind of, get so involved with the thinking and the feelings. It's just having that, like we said, the beginningness of this work is to notice. And I think when certainly I came to this conversation, that was the crucial piece that opened everything. It's the noticing when and how intense and where I where I was, what was going on with the thinking in that moment.
yeah,
And that I was actually, that thinking was just, being so compelling.
yeah. And I think that's also why we often talk about this is on the journey that if you were to go on in this conversation from this space, that's why it's not something that can be prescriptive or like a 5-step and you'll feel blah blah blah, or you're guaranteed to be transformed at the end of, I don't know, working with us for 6 months or whatever. Obviously it's unlikely that there's not going to be any shifts, because that's the whole point of this work, is that it's the getting curious and really trying to understand and unpick, but not from like a over analyzey way, but in terms of understanding what is actually fundamentally going on and where the thinking is coming from, because that's ultimately the root of it. Like we keep saying, it's like, once it's not rearranging the surface, it's getting to the root of like why it's happening, where it's coming from. So then once you understand that, you see it for what it is, and it's like, well, oh yeah, then I don't need to believe that anymore because I can see that it's not real.
Yeah.
And I think, like you were saying, around like the curiosity piece, and there's no tools or techniques in this, because it's you're going out into the world and you're just living your life and you're having all the thinking, you're having all the feelings, and you're then, based on your experiences or what's kind of coming up for you, whether there's a crunch or that uncomfortable feelings and things like that, that's kind of the areas obviously where we're saying about we need to be rigorous and actually look at where they're coming from, rather than just try and get rid of the feeling, because we keep trying to just get rid of it, it's just going to keep coming back in different areas. And
Mm.
I think obviously that's what we were talking about with Lindsay at the start of the conversation as well. It's almost like, and what she was talking about in her journey and coming to this understanding, it was almost like, okay, I've tried this tool or technique, it's not worked. So it, or maybe that area of your life or whatever, it's, you feel like you've got something figured out, but actually then there's still this, and then you're just constantly falling from one thing to the next to the next. It's like it's going to constantly follow you throughout your life, and until you're willing and ready to actually look at fundamentally what is actually going on with your thinking and where it comes from.
And yeah, I mean, that's the thing, that the mind is keeping that seeking, and that, oh, the next best thing, then the next thing will do it. Then I'll be, and that the mind is wanting that. It's wanting that drama, and that, yeah, just keep going, because without, it thinks that it is in control. It thinks that it's got everything, your life plan, what you're doing, all sorted out. It's the narrative. It's it's like, it tells you, well, don't do that, because if you look back a few years ago, this is what happened and this is going to happen again. And we believe it because it's a trickster.
Mm,
It's so elusive, so compelling.
yeah,
It's doing exactly what it is here
yeah,
to do.
To allow us to
and
survive.
to allow us to survive. It just doesn't think that we can do this
Yeah.
on our own. So yeah, of course it will. And I suppose the tools and techniques that we're talking about, it is just managing the surface level. It's just managing the thinking and helping sort of helping soothe or helping dull down the thinking so that we can manage better, and that will to a certain level. And I think as a society, we don't know any different. And there's so much out there. There's so many tools, techniques, self-help, the books, everything. It's all at our fingertips. So why wouldn't we? It's not that it's wrong, and it's not that it doesn't help and certain things, but it's almost like, I love that sort of the analogy of I think I mentioned the other week of, sitting in an audience um at a magic show, and the beautiful assistant gets into the box, and the magician starts to saw her in half, and it's just grip it. It's like, oh my gosh, what if this goes wrong? The mind's like, oh well, what if? Because we love it. We love that sort of feeling of drama and excitement. We pay a lot of money to go and watch. I don't, because I don't like horror films, but you go and pay a lot of money, but you'd walk out of the theater and you know that it was just a horror film. It was just a movie. It's just a script. It's been made up for our benefit of entertainment, and great. But we kind of come out and we feel that sort of bit of, oh yeah, oh gosh, we might think about it and talk about it and maybe have a nightmare, but we know it was a movie. But it's the same thing going on in our life. And going back to this, the magician, it's almost like, until we actually go up on the stage and see there's a trap door underneath the stage, and the lady has just gone down in the trap door, then we're like, that's how it works. And I suppose with our work, that's what we help people see. Not just the moving piece, but we see that it is all just a movie, and we're keeping this movie going with the thinking. And yes, we say it is simple, but I think when we have such compelling thoughts and beliefs and that feel so real, obviously the older we are, they've been around for an awful long time, so they feel very, very heavy. And in certain areas of life, there might not be, like for me, it's like certain things I just don't even think about, and then there's certain things that feel so real still after having these conversations. But yeah, it once it's seen, and once we see that trapdoor, it's like, got
Yeah. And obviously, like you say, you've been around and in this conversation for years, and there's still areas of your life that you still have those crunch moments. You still feel, God, like, don't look at me or whatever. And I think that's kind of the whole point. That's why we talk about this as like a conversation for the rest of your life. It's like there's always going to be different things, or things that you've maybe, because when you're in them and the movie's playing, there's no capacity to be able to see it. It feels so real. There's no space to either consider or question what's kind of going on here. And it is one of those things that once you're ready, and once the system is ready to see it, it sees it. But until then, it's not forcing something. Yes, obviously you can try and ask certain questions or get a bit more curious in certain areas of your life, and those moments where you are experiencing that stress or anxiety, or the crunch moments, like that real, like, oh God, this feels awful, I just want to exit. Those are the kind of the moments that we say to get curious about. But oftentimes the crunch will happen over and over and over again, and it feels uncomfortable, but you might just not quite be ready to look at the why, or kind of where it's coming from. And that's absolutely fine. And that's kind of the whole point. And we're not saying that you'll go through your life and everything will be perfect and you won't even have any uncomfortable feelings about anything. That's why would we want that? It's like you said, we want the drama. So life would be quite boring if we just felt exactly the same every day about everything and we moved through life that way and there was no change in emotion or whatever or reaction to things. But yeah, like we said in the conversation with Lindsay, you pointed out that we are the creators of our experience, and these things are like the example with the girl in the shop feeling like she wanted to be sick every time. We've created that experience to see what we're not, to see that that is the complete opposite of who we actually are, because we're not our thinking. And obviously she's created that experience because of her thinking and the identifiedness of that and the story and the narrative. That is not who we are, but we've created that to see that that's not who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously we didn't talk very much about the process, but obviously she, by the sounds of things, this lady came to Lindsay with with anxious thinking or with anxiety or whatever she labeled herself as experiencing. And so, yeah, it's like, well, where did that come where did that come from in the first place? Where's the root, the origin of that, and how long has this kind of been playing out for? And it's almost like we help our clients, see where the root was, almost like in the soil, and we help them take the root out and see that actually without this, what is left? Well, freedom without that, that thinking, believing that
Yeah, and that
thinking
limitation.
and that limitation. And in that moment that, like we said, it feels so real. There is no space for for anything other than more confusion and yeah, just more kind of validation that I am wrong, I am, unworthy, or I am stupid, or embarrassed, or whatever. Should, I should be able to control this. I should be able to. There is no space there. And I think when we start to see, when people do see this, and it is so, so obvious, because they're like, it's like a light bulb being turned on, isn't it? It's like, oh, wait, but I think when you're with a coach or somebody that has had this light bulb moment for themselves and really seen what's going on, when you're helping somebody, because a lot of the time I'm thinking about our own clients, when they're really in it, in that moment, that experience is happening for them right there, right then. And so it's all playing out. This movie is, it's like being played out again, round and round in
Yeah.
circles. And when that person's in front of us, it's almost like we can see that, we can see it. It's almost like the movie in front of us, but it's being out, it's sort of helping them just step back and
Mm.
seeing how the grip of it there, and just asking the right questions to help them. Is this really true? That was probably one of the most powerful questions. Is this true? This is this is true in this moment, that you feel, that you're unworthy. And then as we sort of, yeah, go deeper, it kind of just starts to dissolve, like a reverse engineering. And then it just kind of falls away. But if something is just moved around, like we were talking about the chess pieces, if something is just moved around, it's almost like we talk about that ball, that squidgy ball, and it just squeezes out in another area because it's not really been taken away from the root cause, hasn't
Yeah,
been taken away.
exactly. The story's still
The
still
story's still
there.
running.
Yeah, exactly. And often, yeah, the story, like we keep saying, it's like probably just thinking about the example, going back to the girl in the shop, there's probably been some, I don't know, come from some level of conditioning, or that story could have developed over time. It might have been quite small and minor to start with,
Yeah.
or some sort of feeling of like, gosh, that embarrassment or whatever the origin of that feeling, of that really visceral, whatever that was for her in that moment, she's likely felt it somewhere else in her life, probably at some point in her childhood. And then as she's obviously tried to avoid that feeling and avoid that feeling and avoid the feeling, because obviously it was so uncomfortable. We don't want to experience that again. That's the survival instinct kicking in. That's all our mind really knows what to do. And then as she's tried to avoid it even more, there's more and more story then put on it about what it means about her. And then it's probably just a tumbleweed effect, and it's actually gotten worse and worse and worse. And then obviously it's resulted in this feeling of not being and not going to shops.
Yeah. And I can relate to that with working with patients that are very, very frightened of coming to the dentist. They have a, phobia of dentistry. And that is quite common because it's not the nice, the nicest of experiences. It's quite a vulnerable experience, lying down in a dental chair, feeling that you can't kind of escape. Most people are absolutely fine, but I have several that you can tell they are experiencing that childhood sort of that trauma, because it all stems from that child having an extraction, pain, sort
Or
of
even
maybe.
just from what their parents have said about the dentist, or they
Yeah.
don't like the dentist, and then their parents are like the dentist, so they don't like the dentist,
Yeah,
and then they
that is that is a classic one. And so, of course, the story builds, the drama bit. We have to have that to be able to see that that isn't really what's going on here. You are fundamentally okay. And I think when they come in, of course, we help them just calm and breathe. That is something that helps just to almost get into their kind of world at the time, because they're so caught up. They know that they have to be here because this is something that needs to be done, but they're hating every minute. And it's very difficult when, you've got a really nervous patient that is so tight, that doesn't open their mouth, just helping them is this, you are okay. And obviously being as gentle as possible. And then usually they're like, gosh, I don't know why but then they go away. They've not really kind of joined the dots. And the next time they come in, the same thing is back again. So we don't we don't want that, because it is in another situation, it'll probably, come back. So we want the whole thing to just fall away, to see the trap door, that it is the thought that we're believing, the power that is kind of, showing us that we are creating this for us, by us. And it's showing us that this is not what we are. We don't need to keep carrying, this story continuing like this, because it affects our whole lives. It affects the body, because the mind is telling the nervous system to be on high alert. It's sending cortisone all around the body. It affects everything, our relationships, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you should tell your squeaky shoe example before we finish up.
Squeaky shoe example.
Or story.
Yeah. My story, I mean, this is something that, we like Ellie just said, this is a conversation for the rest of our lives, and something that shows up every now and again in certain areas that feels sort of so heavy and so real. And there was the other day, I just purchased a new pair of Doc Martens sandals for our upcoming trip to Italy. And I know with Doc Martens that you have to kind of wear them in a little bit to get those blisters away before.
You still get blisters.
So I had them on, and I've walked in them a few times, no problem. They, started to sort of wear a little bit. But then suddenly my right hand shoe got this horrendous squeak. And it was not just a little squeak, it sounded like a duck. It was so loud. And I was walking up the street in Bath, and everybody was turning around and looking at me. Everybody was just like, with this, what the hell expression. And I felt so, oh my gosh, felt so conspicuous. I was like, everybody's looking at me. How embarrassing. I could feel in that moment that almost like, oh God, I have to get away. Stop looking at me. And I kind of stepped back a bit and I was like, why am I, what's going on here? But it really did feel like I don't want people looking at me. This is awful. So anyway, long story short, I went into the Doc Martens shop on the way home, and I walked into the shop and there were all these female assistants and there was one guy standing there, and I thought, so I walked over to him and I said to him, I'm just wondering if you can help me. I've got a squeak in my shoe. And he looked me up and down. Just my thought in that moment was, oh my gosh, he's thinking, what is this old woman doing with Doc Martens sandals on, this trendy Doc Martens sandals on? And he just laughed and said, oh, I presume you've not had any Doc Martens before. And I was like, well, no, I've had a few pairs of Doc Martens and they've never had a squeak like this. And he was again, sort of laughed. He said, well, how long have you worn them for? They look quite new. And I said, well, they are, but I have worn them a few times. I said, but this squeak is getting louder and louder. And again, he laughed and he said, well, you're just going to have to, just wear them in, as if, what are you doing here? Even asking this question. Yeah. And all I wanted was a pair of new sandals, because if I got a pair of new sandals that didn't squeak, then nobody would look at me and I would feel okay and everything would be perfect. But that was completely, how on earth getting a new, unachievable, because, yeah. So I said, can I have a pair of new sandals? No. And it was just a no. I was like, oh, okay. He said, they will be fine. The squeak will go. So I squeaked away from the shop, still feeling silly that I've actually gone in and spoken to this guy and, asked this question. And, and I squeaked all the way down to the station and everybody continued to look at me because it was so loud. And, and the squeak is actually starting to go a little bit now. So, but yeah, it was amazing to kind of witness the movie and the story and the drama playing out in that moment of sheer kind of, I just want to get away, just sort this problem out and then I'll be okay. And yeah, I could see the story for what it was. But I think years ago it would have been a different situation. I just wouldn't have been, it would have felt, I would have probably never worn the sandals again.
Yeah. And obviously, like, just going back to everything that we were saying, and that you created that experience, even though obviously it was the opposite of what you wanted. Like, you don't want to draw attention to yourself, and you don't want to feel like people are looking at you and all eyes are on you. But that was the creation, that was the film running for you to then be able to have that experience of feeling that crunch of, oh my God, get me out of here, get these shoes off my feet. I need new shoes because I don't want to ever feel this feeling again. And this feeling of, well, I don't know, I can't speak to what that felt for you, or the sort of the stickiness or the root of where that kind of comes from for you. But yeah, just amazing. And could have been that actually, you weren't able to see that was what was happening, but you saw it, and like you say, you saw it for what it was, and you can see that, okay, well, it's not got anything to do with the shoes.
No, nothing to do with the shoes. It was old. It was very familiar because I have enough awareness to understand the root and where that was coming from. And oh my gosh, I think being able to see that I was creating that for me to see again. This was here. It was created for me to be able to see this remaining story that's old, ancient sort of, stuff that's still lingering around a little bit that kind of needs to.
And what would you say? What's the story?
Oh, The story is that I'm not worthy enough, good enough. Yeah, I don't have the right to be wearing a pair of Doc Marten sandals. At my age, I'm just not good enough. I'm not worthy enough.
Yeah.
And I have,
And then obviously then in the people then looking at you, that
I need to
put a
hide, and I
spotlight.
wasn't
Yeah. Put
yeah,
a spotlight on
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Really cool.
It was a perfect setup, and the setup is, as we say in our work, it is intentional. And a lot of people think this is intentional. Gosh, what am I putting myself through? But that is the freedom and the power behind that is just
exactly
huge.
Because if you're not willing to see it, and you're not, like you say, if you're not willing to, and the intentionality behind experiencing these things that are actually going to make us feel uncomfortable, we're never going to be able to see the trapdoor or Oz behind the curtain. Like we'll just carry on and carry on and carry on.
Which is why it is so compelling, which is part of the human experience. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. It's, the mind only thinking it's helping us out. Oh, just, soothe that. You don't need to do that. Stay away. But it isolates the joy. And because we have to have joy, we have to see the pain or the discomfort, to see the joy, to see that we are infinite creative potential. We can create anything we want. And when we see it is the movie, when we can see that we are a character in the movie in that moment, that we are lost. We are lost in it in that moment. But wow, when we see that is the loosening of the grip of the mind playing tricks. We've kind of caught on to something a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
In that moment. Yeah. And I suppose that's the work that we do. It is freedom beyond our thinking, beyond our beliefs, beyond the story. And when we see the story for what it is, it can just run as a story without any grip.
Exactly. And that's ultimately the freedom, isn't it? Because there's no thinking or personal identified. It's not. It's just thoughts moving through, rather than like, oh gosh, that means something about me.
Yeah, means something about me that I have to control, I have to get rid of, I have to fix, or get over, or get better at, or and it's gripping, but there's freedom on the other side of that.
Well, that feels like a good place to wrap up. All I can say is I hope your shoes are still squeaky in Italy, because I want to hear that duck noise.
Yeah, get some Italian looks.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, thank you very much for listening, as always, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.